Welcome, everybody, to the Salesforce and the Life Sciences virtual group. So pleased to have you all here today, but let me tell you, I am thrilled to my toes that Rebecca Gray from Capstorm is joining us today. Rebecca is one of my favorite speakers. Every time she makes a presentation, I learn so many things, not just in terms of subject matter and content, but in terms of how to present things so that people understand them. Rebecca is one of the most clear and cohesive speakers I've ever seen live or via virtual meetings. So I invite you to join us as we welcome Rebecca. If you have any questions, please throw them in the chat. Hang here till the end. Andrew is going to pull a name for a Salesforce swag pack that we will send out to somebody in the United States. So without any further ado, Rebecca, I am kicking it over to you. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Shannon. I appreciate the introduction. Now the pressure is on to be amazing, but we are going to give it a shot. Today's topic is one that is near and dear to my heart. How do you know your Salesforce backup is any good? If you love grammar, I'm sorry. I know I just butchered the English language. But is your Salesforce backup any good? Do you have one? Step one. We're going to talk about this in context of a home. And I'm going to show you a little picture. This is my Florida home. Actually, it's not. I would never live that close to the water. I'm not crazy, but I do live in Florida. I do live 10 minutes from the Gulf of Mexico, and I pay dearly for my homeowner's insurance. Now, I don't write that check because I love insurance. I write that check because we have a hurricane that hits my area substantially, typically every 10 years. And when I buy my insurance, I don't buy from a local mom and pop. The reason why is I'm not confident in the coverage. I care that if my home gets destroyed by a hurricane, that I will get paid. I will be able to replace my home. My family will not be living in a motel. So backup is a lot like insurance. How do you gain confidence with Salesforce backups that your insurance policy is actually going to pay out when you need it to? That's the topic we're talking about today. Now, obviously, you're going to read reviews. You're going to talk to others. You're going to get all of that anecdotal evidence to believe in your backup vendor. But today, we're going to pretend you don't know anything about your backup vendor. How do they prove it? How do you do tangible actions to validate and verify that you actually have coverage on your gorgeous Florida home? Now let's talk about this house. This house is my core Salesforce org. It's beautiful. It has structures. It has layers. It has furniture. I have some custom fields sitting on the porch. And I also have some outbuildings. I have some managed packages, my boat. I have a dock. I have an outbuilding integration that's connected into my main org. I want to make sure my insurance is covering everything. I want full coverage. So let's talk first about my core home. How do I make sure that my home is protected? Now, this is simply stated, did I back up all my records? Did I actually get them all? We're going to start with permissions because my replication of my Salesforce house is only as good as what my backup user can see. Now, this is hard. We're all a fan of field level security, right? We don't want users to see things they shouldn't. The big question mark there is, can my backup user or my administrator actually see everything? Now, this has been difficult for years. This is becoming more and more difficult as we move away from profile permissioning to permission sets. So permission sets, permission set group, muting permissions, oh my. What are we actually covering? Now we're going to talk in this context about a couple common permissioning mistakes. And then I'm going to show you a tangible tool you can use today. Mistake number one, believing view all data actually means all data. Field level permissions, query all files. Even if I have view all data, I don't actually get access to all files. This is important if I want to file a claim against my insurance. The second common fallacy that I usually don't talk about on calls unless I'm talking with someone in the healthcare life sciences group or in banking is forgetting about the unencryption side of encrypted data. So extraction and a backup of encrypted data is worthless without the key. If I have Shield, Salesforce Shield in place, or I'm just using standard field level encryption, and I replicate data and my user cannot view unencrypted data, my backup is full of garbage. I may as well have just taken my sofa out of my house and thrown it in my front yard because it is that worthless as a backup recovery. Because I have to get to unencrypted data. Doesn't mean I don't have to protect it, but I have to be able at some point to get to unencrypted data in order to recover it. My third step here is ignoring evolution. Just like my house, I put on new patios, I paint the walls, I'm adding new furniture. I built an extra bedroom in my house this last year. That's a long story we'll talk about later. Salesforce is changing over time. And something that is so easy to do is completely ignore evolution. Here's 3 examples, and I'm not asking you to trust me. We're going to go to Salesforce's website and I'll show you why. Permission set assignment, probably important thing to back up. Ooh, some are 20 and later. I cannot tell you the number of backups I support with customers where we run initial backup, we're doing validation, and they have half of their permission set assignments. Why? Well, why would you give your backup user managed user or assign permission sets or even necessarily view setup and configuration? It's not intuitive. And because it's not intuitive, it's incredibly easy to overlook. I had a customer I helped set up a backup 2 weeks ago, got hit by all 3 of these. That's why they're fresh in my mind. Permission set tab setting, similar. Spring 20, this is not a recent change. But these type of changes happen and they happen often. Without validation and awareness of what your insurance covers, you're going to miss something. And here's my personal favorite. Visual force access metrics. And the reason why I think it's fun is why would you ever give your backup user customized application? Nobody would think of that. I would never logically think of that. And frankly, with my customers, when we're doing metadata backups and things, I usually recommend not insuring this object because customized application is a really hefty admin setting to give to a user credential that you really want is read only. But here's a few examples. If you ignore evolution, your backup will be incomplete. You'll forget that view all data doesn't mean view everything. You'll forget about unencryption of encrypted data, and you'll forget about changes Salesforce makes over time. Because I know not all of you read every single iota of those release notes. I don't either. Now, another item that is so easy to forget is the boat. It's not sitting on the main house. It's so easy to overlook the boat. But if I overlook the boat, AKA my managed package, I may be missing a massive chunk of data. Now, I'm going to give you a real life story. I cannot say the customer name because I'm pretty in trouble if I do. Multi-org, lots of data. We ran initial permissions validation. They had been using a competitor of Capstorm's, another backup provider that was recently acquired by Salesforce. You can Google that if you want. And for multiple years, they had no idea they were missing in their backup a critical managed package because there was not a backup validation. We ran permissions validation, thought, oh my goodness, we need this object, this object, this object. And it was as simple as assigning a license to the user. Forgetting the boat is really easy to do. Forgetting the shed is really easy to do. There are multiple Salesforce features that you need special licenses to be assigned to your user, or you're going to dismiss it. Knowledge, easy one. If you don't tick the knowledge user checkbox, you don't get access to knowledge. Trust, your insurance, but use your brain and verify it. Signing a contract that says you have a backup does not mean you actually have one. It might mean you have something. And if you look at your backup vendor's website, including Capstorm's, so not saying it's not us too, you are responsible for making sure that your user can see everything. So use whatever tools your vendor gives you and actually validate. Now, here's a way you can trust and verify, and it's free. So it comes from Capstorm, but it's a tool that you can use anytime you want. We call it let me move the Zoom thing over. It's okay. We'll just go to the website. Whoa, we're not going to do that. It is called the Permissions Checker. You can download it here if you want to. All you do is fill in your information. You can call yourself Bob Smith if you want to. It doesn't matter if it's great information. You will get access. And I feel so passionately about this. I would rather have 75 Bob Smiths that have good backups than one really, really good lead. Because if you don't back it up, you can't recover it. And let's look at what this looks like. I downloaded an application, not hard to do. I've unzipped it. We're all semi-IT people. We can unzip a folder. And I put in credentials, and this is a little Trailhead org I have. And my user is a sysadmin. Once it connects, it is a sysadmin. I do have view all data. Most people would think you're covered. I can query all files. I'm a knowledge user. I'm a content user. But let's see what happens when I actually run a check. Now, this is not a complicated application. You put in credentials, you hit a button. It runs on your machine because that means your data is safe. You're not giving Capstorm your login. You're not giving anyone your credential. You're typing it in on your computer. And oh my goodness, look at this. I have some custom fields on account that will not be in my backup. Now I can back up the whole account object, but I will never know I have these 3 holes. If I go a little further, I have this payroll object that's been created at some point. Oh, well, I can see the object, but I can't see amount, employee, manager, or payroll date. If I have HR data in my org and I need to recover it, and I get this answer of we messed up payroll, I need to know what people were paid. I need to know who was paid and when they were paid. As an admin, I can't help them because the data is not in my backup. My insurance policy will not pay out. So the fix is easy. Hop on Capstorm, download the tool, and run it. Hopefully, you run it, and then you're ready to have a glass of wine or a beer and call it a Friday. But if you run it and you get a list that is 300 things long, I've seen it. I also have a permission set creator that will give you create a view all permission set that really is view all. Now, you got to pay for it. So if you want to give me a holler, I'll make sales real happy today. All right, here's our next problem. Let me go, whoops, skipping ahead. These are all my children. If you're wondering what I do after work, the answer is not much. And I need to get back to my slides. Here we go. Did I insure the boat? Do I not only have access to all fields and all objects, all packages, all features? Do I have all records? I can find my field gaps. We've done that already. My next question is, what about all the records? Because we haven't addressed that yet. I don't have a free tool for this. It is a customer thing, but I can help you with that later if you want. This is a part of every single backup implementation I'm on. And it doesn't matter if you are a 10 employee company or if you are a global Fortune 50 or Fortune 10 pharma company. I don't care who you are, everyone does this. I'm going to go into a toolkit and I'm going to run a record count analysis of my entire data set. What I am running here is really simple. Salesforce, select count, object. Database, select count, all objects. Do I have any discrepancies? Because if I do this right after my backup, everything should, in theory, match. Now, of course, in my example here, you'll notice I have 102 accounts in my database and 104 in Salesforce. I missed something. I probably missed a record type. That's what it's indicative of. And if I keep going down, you'll see I have scenarios where I have lots of records in Salesforce and none in my database. Why would that happen? Well, I'm probably not replicating things that are unrestorable. That's my last thing we're going to talk about in terms of selecting insurance and validating insurance before we get to fire drills. Not every piece of Salesforce is restorable. That's a super common fallacy. I get asked this question probably 10 times a week. Okay, so let's say this happens to my house. Oh my goodness, my house is destroyed. Can I get a new one, please? Can you just spin up a new one? And how long will it take to get a new one? Well, the answer to that is as complex as can you hire the same contractor you hired the first time? Can you buy the exact same model of fridge you had in yours? My fridge is like 5, 6 years old. I don't think I can get the same one again. There is a lot in Salesforce that is not recoverable. I have a list of about 100 objects that you can replicate, you can query, but you cannot insert them. Some of them are kind of obvious. For example, you can't query for users' passwords. Probably smart, right? You shouldn't be able to query for a user password, but that means I can't cleanly give you your user table back exactly the way it was. And of course, and usernames are globally unique. We all know that, so that's a duh. But also history tables. Now, this is huge for my life sciences people. History records in Salesforce track who changed what. They can become critical when you run into an audit. Whether you're audited by the government or whether you're being audited because of you're being sued. I run into this all the time. This big Fortune 50s get sued every day. Even though you can't recover it, when you're building your insurance policy, you may want to consider having in your policy things that you know you can't put back. This shed is not going back to the way it was, no matter what I want to do with it. But what I can do is I can still have the bits and pieces. And I can use those bits and pieces to construct an accurate picture of what the shed looked like at the time the hurricane hit it. That's why it's very important to validate, because the only way you know that you can get paid out or reimbursed to the level that you want is to validate. Validate permissions. Validate your record counts, even if it's not restorable. All right, it's a lot of doom and gloom. I know, hurricane, fires, all this horrible stuff. Let's talk about other things you can actually do to validate that are a lot more fun. See, these are items that add value to your business, but they also give you a little bit of assurance that you're going to be in a decent spot if there is a disaster. And I'll say burning down the house is not an option. I'm never going to recommend you do a full restore. You have Salesforce limits. You have time commitments. Man, you may as well migrate your whole thing to another org if you're going to try a full restore. So these items are designed to be practical, usable, and not things you need to devote 2 months to actually doing. So let's hold some fire drills. Now, in my house, I have 5 kids. We do a lot of fire drills. We're foster parents. We get a new kid. We do a fire drill. Why? I'm not lighting the house on fire with my candles every day, but I do want my children to know what to do when there is an emergency. So you build muscles of repetition by doing things again and again and again. If you ask my 3-year-old what to do when there's a fire, she's going to point out the door and say, mailbox, because we built the muscle of repetition. And you can do this with sandbox seating. You can do this by taking small chunks of production data, doing masking, pushing them into lower environments. What are you doing? You're building muscle memory. You're building reps, testing your recovery plan. Because it's unlikely that hurricane's going to really happen. It's really likely someone's going to chop down a tree in your front yard and smash your porch. Not shattering to your home, not the end of the world, not underwater, but must be recovered. If you practice chopping down little saplings, when that tree hits your porch, you're ready because you know how to put it back together. Now, in addition to doing sandbox seating, of course, do disaster recovery tests. This org uses cases. Well, have you tested a case restore? You haven't? Oh, come on. Like, I want to shake you a little bit, right? If you haven't tested it, how do you know it'll work? And then, of course, use your data. If you have a copy of Salesforce data not in Salesforce, why would you not use it? Use it for reporting, use it for analytics, use it for integration, whatever you want. But you better guess your analytics team is going to notice when your opportunities have not refreshed in a week. It's a lot harder to know my backup didn't run for a week if I'm not daily monitoring it. So the more eyes on the data, the more likely it is you'll catch a problem. Now, second thing is controlled burns. Now, sometimes there's things that need to be burned down in a controllable way. My area, back to Florida. I know you're all jealous now. We have a lot of underbrush. If you're driving down the Highway 98, you're going to see lots of signs that say smoke ahead, controlled burn. Why? Because forest fires are incredibly dangerous. We know that. If you're in California, you know that for sure. But if you perform controlled burns and clear the brush, you massively decrease your risk of a raging inferno. All right, let's talk about boobs. We're going to change the topic right now. Boobs. All right, y'all ready for a topic change? I did say that. Is everyone surprised? Yes, a little bit. I told one of my colleagues I was doing that, and he said, good thing you're a woman, because I think you can get away with it. Yeah. All right. We're going to talk about boobs. I have a customer, and a lot of their business, they have a big department that sells breast implants. They have a unique serial number, and this serial number has to be tracked. It has to be tracked from creation, the group that bought it, the doctor that bought it, and the woman that got it, or the man could get it too. But whoever gets this implant, this data has to be tracked, it has to be captured, it has to be known for a very long period of time. This implant could be scheduled, it could be removed, it could be put somewhere else. Well, here's the big problem. We have a ton of data and we have a Salesforce org, and you hit those data storage overages and it's a lot of money. It's extra brush. It needs to be burned. It needs to be controlled. It needs to be archived. Retention of records off platform, the deletion of data on platform, and those tests of recovery, this is a mini controllable fire. And it's covered by your insurance if it goes badly. This is a real use case of a customer that had to keep years and years and years and years and years of data. But why would they keep them somewhere that's incredibly expensive to store when you could pull it off? Reference it on platforms, people can get to it quickly, but store it somewhere like a controlled burn. Clear the brush. All right, that's enough on boobs. Enough for today. I think I've woken everybody up if they were starting to lose focus and check their email. Here's our conclusion, and then we're going to go into some Q&A if anybody has anything for me. I am super open book. Ask me anything. The need for insurance should be obvious. Loss, corruption can happen anytime. You can have a rogue employee decide they want to sit there and delete. That could happen any moment. The big question is not if will we have a problem? The big question, like my home, is will my insurance cover my claim? And it is your responsibility to do your due diligence to make sure that can be covered. Thank you so much for everyone's attention. Andrew, you've been in the bottom of my screen. I've loved watching you nod and smile. That has made my morning.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love listening to you, Rebecca. So I do have a question, if you don't mind me asking, just to kick off our Q&A, if that's okay.
Yes.
A lot of our clients are always so obsessed with wanting to know the value, the return on investment, right? For checking something like data or security. So do you have I know you have a number. Is there a number out there that you're like, this is what we're seeing as far as people getting into these emergency situations, what it's costing them to not be proactive and instead be reactive? Is there an actual physical number that you can attribute to this?
Let me tell you a story, Andrew. I love stories. Do you anybody remember that part out fun we had a couple years ago where people got locked out of orgs? How much does it cost you to not be able to get into Salesforce for a week? How much revenue
Yeah.
loss is that for your business? Because I
Yeah.
had people that happened to, and then they called me and said, oh my gosh, why do we not have a backup? How much does it cost you if Salesforce data center loses 6 hours of production updates? I don't know. How much money does your company make in 6 hours?
Yeah.
Even more fun, what happens if you have a data breach and you get sued? What is your company worth? These are hard questions and they're like insurance, right? My homeowner's insurance, this is so personal. My homeowner's insurance lapsed last week because my mortgage company paid it a day late. I panicked. I got my credit card out. I made that payment same day. And then I called my mortgage company and said, what is going on? Probably using words I won't say on a recorded call. The question to me was not why am I writing this check or why am I putting this on my credit card? The question I asked is, oh my gosh, what happens if my kid burns down my house tomorrow? So I think sometimes when you're talking about backup, it's almost something you have to reframe. You have to reframe it as what do you lose? But there's a small silver lining. If you're working with a backup vendor that lets you have access to your data, the question then on ROI, the question my customers ask, what else can I do with it now? Because it's so much easier to tell my CIO, all right, we are now able to avoid buying more full copy sandboxes because we can seed our developer orgs. My cost savings are X. We're paying this for data storage, purpose that revenue to launch this AI initiative you want, and we can clean up some tech debt at the same time. Oh, now we can do a near real-time integration that we couldn't do before. Now, those are exciting ROI conversations. Backup, it's not sexy. It's never been sexy, but it doesn't change the fact that it's really critical. There's no way I'm going to stop paying my insurance, no matter how badly I want to. That check's paid before I pay my electric bill. Did that answer your question, Andrew?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's such a valid way to frame things. I think it's always so tough for us to make sure that we're framing things correctly to our customers. So I think that's just the perfect way to do it. Thank you.
Yep. No one cares till it burns down. I can tell you,
It's so true.
yeah, I've been doing this 9 years. I've seen it hundreds of times.
Yeah,
Until it's on fire, you don't think about it. When it's on fire, I'm sorry if you're an admin. It's your butt in the hot seat. I hope you solved it.
perfect. Thank you.
Anything else?
What is the process of implementing Capstorm like for a customer that's looking to back up their data?
It's a good question, Sam. Of course, I'll help you with that one. You need two elements. You've got some product that needs to run somewhere. One thing that Capstorm is we're primarily not SaaS-based. We have a SaaS-based solution, but for my healthcare life sciences customers, they want to hold, feel, touch, control their data. So it's somewhere to run a product and somewhere to store data. It's pretty simple. Now, I walk everyone through a very complete implementation process, and 75% of the work is before you even click a start backup button. It's, do my user credentials actually capture what I want? And that's not my call, right? It's their call. Is this important to you? What frequency do you want backups to run? Do you need 15 minutes? Do you need a return point that's really quick compared to real time? Or is once a day okay? How critical is this data to your organization? What's your loss look like? Do you want to keep rollback for a long time? I have customers that need to do 10 years of rollback. It's a lot of data changes. But if that case changes, they want to be able to revert back to old version. What does that look like for you? How far do you want to go? So you have this whole preparation step, and then you have this somewhat anticlimactic point where someone clicks start. And then you have a database that now mirrors Salesforce that you can validate, you can query, and you can leverage. Or like most of my life sciences people, you have 3 or 4 databases. You have a Snowflake for analytics, you have a Postgres for backup, you might have something else for archival. But Sam, you start with your foundation, you get your foundational elements in place, and then backup should be fairly anticlimactic. Then move to fun stuff like archive, sandbox.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Sam. It's good to see you again, by the way. I haven't seen
Yeah,
you
you too.
since, what, 3 years ago? Conference, something like that?
Was it? No, it was last September.
Oh,
Did you not go
look
to
at
the
that.
last life sciences training?
I don't think I did. I think I went to 2 ago, but I also
You
have,
definitely should go to the next one at the very
yeah,
least.
I'd like to, except for the whole kids thing kind of chained to the desk. So in the house, which is why I paid to insure it. All right, anyone else?
I have a question, Rebecca. I know that your client roster is like the who's who of big pharma being included in it. And I don't want you to tell us any names, and I'm not asking for the piping hot tea, but what are some of the things that you see even big organizations forgetting about? Things that we should say, this is a cautionary tale, because none of us want to see a fire. We're all here today because we're like, let's make sure we get that insurance before the fire comes our way.
Yeah. One of my biggest soapboxes I like to jump on and scream on is permissions drift. Sometimes when you set up a backup, and a lot of people think this way, you set up a backup, you click start, it's running for a month, no problems. It's really easy to forget it. And even we talk about set it and forget it, like a backup should be. However, Salesforce is dynamic. It's changing. It's evolving. There are some maintenance activities that you really should consider when you have a disaster recovery solution. Permissions drift is a huge one. It's so easy, especially on, I work with a group, I can say their name. I spend a lot of time with the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. They publicly publish their vendors. I can say their name, unlike most of mine. I know they're not HLS, right? But they do have a lot of sensitive data. When you have an organization where you have millions and millions of records changing per day, and you have multiple teams that are all involved in the evolution of these not monolithic, but these massive tech stacks, it's really easy to forget. The backup user profile or user has to see a field. If you ignore drift, it gets worse. You drift further and further and further from what you actually need. So you have to have controlled or planned processes in place to catch up. Same thing with Salesforce. Salesforce APIs evolve. We know they do releases. You need to make sure your backup products are updated, upgraded over time to stay in place. Step. Usually once a year is fine. It's not a massive lift. But if you ignore it for 5 or 6 years, you shouldn't be surprised if it bites you in the butt because stuff changes. Thanks, Shannon. Great question.
Thanks for that answer. It gave me a lot to think about, Rebecca.
Awesome. Anyone else? I'm an open book.
Anyone else have if you have a question that you're embarrassed to ask out loud, you can DM it to me and I'll read it. Rebecca is one of the most amazing people I've ever heard and not judging. I know, Rebecca, that you run into a lot of customers who might actually be surprised that Salesforce doesn't keep a backup. I think a lot of people think Salesforce natively is keeping a backup of their data and they only find out when it's too late.
Yes. And it depends on what the customer does, right? So I've had small nonprofits where the CSV export is fine, which I don't recommend it. I don't think it's great for recovery. It's awful for recovery. But if you're using Salesforce and all you do is this little sliver, it might be worth it. I don't want you to spend your money. You're a nonprofit. But if you believe Salesforce is going to recover your data for you, it's one of those let me Google it for you type issues. And it can be very hard to convince. I don't want to minimize that. It's going to be very hard to convince senior leadership who's already invested, and many customers case millions into this platform between people, contractors, consultants, all the different aspects that go into it. And Salesforce obviously is very focused on the new thing, right? Let's get data cloud, let's get all these other add-ons. It's hard to forget core platform. But at some juncture, it's really hard to convince, but it has to be said that if you do not protect your investment and it burns down to the ground, your loss is huge. So I think that for all organizations, it's just a topic that has to come up. And it has to be one you're willing to really hammer, interact, and just say, guys, even in my, make sure you have it in writing, just in case something goes wrong with your boss. Goodness gracious, just email your boss and say, hey, FYI, I found this article from Salesforce and they say we're not covered. We probably should buy coverage. And then you keep your job if something goes wrong.
Amazing, incredible. Rebecca, thank you again so much for joining us today on this critical topic, probably one of the most important and exciting topics and I mean exciting because people get excited about it when they don't know what they're doing. And so I appreciate you sharing this with all of us. Of course, we have recorded this session and I will share it out with you, Rebecca, so we can determine what can be shared publicly. But this is the most important topic I think that there is. Talking about it like insurance is great. I'm very, very jealous of the house that you showed us, and I hope that that's AI and not somebody's actual house, is it?
Oh, it's AI. It's give me a house in Florida, now destroy it with a hurricane. It's all AI. Yeah, no way.
Few, because I was going to have to say, you have to tell me what the person does that's living in that kind of house.
Oh, they're probably a CIO of something very big.
Amazing.
They bought it with all the money they saved from having Capstorm, right?
We'll say that. Awesome. Thanks, Sam.
We'll go with that. Well, thank you, everybody. You know, this is still one of the earliest life sciences virtual Trailblazer group meetings that we've had. We've had less than a handful. I think, Brian Murphy, you've been at every one. So happy to see you at all of them. Looking forward to hearing a topic from you, Brian, because we'd love to get you on as a speaker. And anybody who would like to be a speaker, please let us know. Or if you find an app or a partner that's as valuable and educational as Rebecca from Capstorm is, please let me know. this group is for you guys. So really excited to see you all here. And anybody who's catching it in the behind, please, the offer is open for you too. Brian, I see your real live face, so I'm wondering, do you already have a topic?
I could probably come up with one pretty quickly. So yeah, we can talk about that offline.
Perfect.
But really
Excellent.
appreciate this, Rebecca. I wasn't expecting this discussion, and you showed me some really cool tools that I wasn't aware of. So I'm going to start using those right away.
Fantastic.
Always great.
I'd love to see you use it. I want everybody to use that because why would you not validate your backup? Why would you not? So
Yeah.
thanks, Brian. If anyone wants to connect with me on LinkedIn, I know that my URL is in the chat window. No pressure. We don't have to be friends, but if you want to, I'd love to meet you virtually again.
I love it. Thank you again so much, Rebecca. Andrew, I think you pulled down everybody in the prize wheel.
Yeah, so I've been entering everybody who's here on the prize wheel, and I'm going to spin it real quickly and just go ahead and see who wins. Okay, we're spinning, we're spinning, we're spinning, we're spinning. Okay, funny enough, the winner is Rebecca.
No, have someone else do it. Have
Is-
someone else do it. There's no way I'm gonna have time to do that. So pass it to
Okay.
somebody else.
Okay, let me go ahead and
I want a member to win.
Okay, here we go. Spinning, spinning, spinning. Okay, land on Rebecca again. Hold on. Okay, we're gonna have to spin one more time. I
Sorry, y'all.
remove.
I'm so popular. I'm sorry.
I think I
You're
just
just a
forgot
winner,
to.
Rebecca. We all know you're a winner.
Okay, it's actually Naomi, so
Woo!
that works out
All
perfectly.
right.
There we go. Awesome. Sorry I had to spin it 3 times, but thank you all for being here. And Naomi, we will be sending you a package. Go ahead and send a DM to either myself or Shannon on LinkedIn, and we'll get the information we need to you and send out your little package.
Awesome.
Fantastic. Thank you guys so much. I hope everybody has a wonderful weekend. Enjoy the rest of your Friday, and I hope that Saturday and Sunday are magical for you as well.